Hello there, I'm Beth Berry. I'm Vice President of Business Development for Real Green Systems. We are a software company based in Walled Lake, Michigan. Primarily, we serve the green industry and pest control with a lot of integrated solutions for marketing. We had the pleasure, was it 2015, I think, to host Jason Falls as our keynote for Solutions. Any of you have been at Solutions, love that event. We have about a 95% repeat rate, but your wit and wisdom were very highly applauded while you were there. I think you're hilarious. You are considered an in-demand digital strategist and analyst. You have workshops, webinars. I've signed up for your daily newsletter. I think it's daily. And you're working on a new book. So introduce us to yourself if you were not fortunate enough to be at Solutions, and tell us everything you're doing these days.
Well, thanks for having me, Beth. It's good to be back with the Real Green folks. Definitely enjoyed my time down there with you guys. Well, I mean, by way of introductions, you covered most of it. I spend my days with Cornet, which is an agency in Lexington, Kentucky, and we work on a number of nice brands that do some really cool things. I'm kind of lead up the digital strategy, PR, and SEO teams there. But in addition to that, I do some speaking and some writing. I just finished the manuscript for my third book, which is coming out next January, I hope. The publishing process is a long process, so but it's all about influence marketing, and so that's coming up. And I do I do a monthly newsletter. Don't do a daily newsletter. That'll wear people out, I think. But I do a monthly newsletter on influence as a much broader topic, not just influencers, but influence. Share a lot of great content on social channels, so I'm easy to find out there too.
Now, explain to us if you, my daughter has been forcing me to watch The Office. I'm very unhip, very uncultured, so now I know who Michael Scott is. But what I love that he talks about is he'll be talking to the CFO about their P&L, and he'll go, talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. So talk to me like I'm a 5-year-old. Define influencer from your perspective.
So I think in the book, and I'm probably haven't memorized this verbatim yet, but I think in the book that I kind of spell out, an influencer is anyone who can persuade an audience to take action. And that's a very broad definition because I think another argument I make in the book is that we've started to call people who have big audiences online influencers, and that kind of takes away from the act of influencing because
Kim Kardashian has
exactly.
millions and millions of people, but is she going to convince anyone to sign up for your podcast?
Exactly. And so online influencers are a part of influence marketing, but the president of the local PTA can be an influencer, an elected official can be an influencer, a lobbyist for Congress or your state legislature can be an influencer too. So using marketing to influence audiences of people is a much broader topic, and I think we're kind of putting ourselves in the corner with saying, oh, I do influencer marketing, which means I get people on Instagram to post about you or get people on YouTube to talk about you. So I tackle it from a much more broad perspective, although the online influencers certainly are a big part of what we're doing.
So let's say within our 3,000 companies who use our software, and we have everyone from the very largest names in lawn care to Chuck in a Truck who started up this year, those who decide to outsource digital marketing and influencer marketing, do you folks at Cornet have different packages to fit different size businesses?
Well, Cornet is a full service advertising agency, so we work with medium and large businesses primarily. But I do know plenty of agencies and consultants out there that do that. There are a number of them that, can say, just for, really a few $100s a month, manage your social media. And then obviously, as you scale up with the number of social networks that you're posting on, the types of content you're creating, the frequency of content you're creating. And with regard to influence marketing, it really is, how big you want to scale it. And so for, someone who might be operating in a local market and doesn't have a big geographic footprint, you can, probably connect with your local influencers that are going to impact your business yourself without having to have a whole lot of help. You just kind of have to know where to look.
That was more my question. Real Green offers some social tools and some digital marketing solutions But in terms of procuring influencers, you think that you could just, so if I just started a lawn mowing business in Louisville, Kentucky, over there on the east side in the swanky area, who would I reach out to first to be influencers?
You know, that's a great question and a great example that I actually should go back and put in the book because, you know, I happen to have a friend of mine who is a landscaper and mows yards and does landscape, you know, stuff for people here in Louisville. And he asked me one time, hey, what should I be doing on social media? And I said, well, how do you get your current customers? And he said, well, typically I pick up a customer if I go, you know, cut somebody's grass in a new neighborhood. A couple of the neighbors asked me if I could cut theirs too. And I was like, well, then don't go play on social media, go cut yards in different neighborhoods that you don't have customers in. So you have to think about the scale of it. But if I were to do something with local influencers in Louisville, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of local, you know, bloggers and Instagrammers and YouTubers who focus on landscaping and, you know, yard, you know, green work, things like that. So if there are, I'm going to reach out and partner with them. But I'm probably going to have to look at a much more broad, you know, swath of people who are influencers. So it might be that I'm looking at, you know, someone who does crafts, or it might be that I'm looking for someone who does, you know, cooking and food stuff. People who hike, people who do outdoors things. I'm going to want to try to connect with influencers that might be parallel to what I do, but not exactly what I do in my local area. And sometimes that means your local influencers are going to be the people at the local newspapers or the local radio stations, or, you know, even the traditional media. They can influence too and still do. So it's really just a matter of you know, asking around and figuring out who in town do people watch? Who do they take advice from? Who do they get advice from? Where do they turn to if they want to get recommendations for local services like mine? That's going to be your path of influence. You've got to figure out how to partner with them.
Do you recommend providing them some compensation for that?
It depends. In most cases, I would say be prepared to. You don't always have to provide compensation. For instance, if you've got a, you know, someone who's big on Instagram, and let's say that you see that they're, you know, having some sort of, you know, issue with their yard, or they have, you know, broken limbs taken down or something like that, and you happen to see that and jump in and say, you know, hey, why don't we, you know, work out a partnership where, you know, I come over and do these things that you need done, and you just tell people you're using us. If the trade might be enough for them. If you're looking at a larger scale, if you have a bigger geographic footprint and you're looking to do something regionally or nationally, and you have an influencer online or offline that has an audience that you want to impact, I think it's always great to approach them with the mindset of, hey, I'd love to work out a partnership with you. What does that look like? And be prepared if they say, well, you know what, I will post a bunch of stuff, a bunch of content on my social networks about you guys, and I charge this amount of money. Or, you know, what's your budget? What can you work with? So have a number in mind. Understand that you don't have to pay most influencers tens of thousands of dollars for a single post. Most of them are going to do it for something reasonable, and you can do like a 3-month, you know, trial period where you're paying them a couple $100s a month to see what they can do. But I would also advise you, if you're going to pay them, if they ask to be paid, then you need to say, okay, I'm going to pay you, but I want to make sure that I get analytics and metrics back from you. I need to know what you're doing to prove that I've got a return coming back on my investment. So let's work together to figure that out, whether it's driving people to a landing page on your website, giving them a coupon code, something like that. You've got to have a way to measure it so you understand the value of that influence relationship.
And as I asked that question, I was reminded of a conversation I had with one of our larger clients last week. If you think about who in the service industry, and in particular the green industry, who benefits from the outcome of our services, realtors. So realtors are selling houses, and you want that to be able to hand off, here's the utilities, here's the school system, and here's a recommended landscaper, maintenance, mowing in the area. And that particular individual was going to barter services, i.e. provide free service at the real estate office. And of course, you wanted it to be fantastic and place the sign out there in exchange for referrals. So that's a terrific idea.
And realtors is another group. There are lots of, they're becoming more and more realtors who are getting involved in social media content, building their own networks, providing great content to attract, obviously, home buyers to their pages and their profiles and whatnot. they might be the influential people. We in Lexington, Kentucky, where Cornett is located, we have a list, a group of Lexington influencers. And one of them is a very popular real estate agent who has a lot of social content out there. Doesn't always have to do with selling houses. Sometimes it's just being involved in the community. She in Lexington, Kentucky would be a perfect person to partner with to exchange some content and do some things with, because she's going to reach a lot of people in that market.
Tell me how the events of the last 2 months, i.e. COVID, and then also potentially catastrophic downstream economic consequences for a big piece of the market, are influencing how you would guide influencers to provide content.
Wow, that's a really good question. I think, my stance, of course, I'm very pro influence marketing. I do it. I practice it a lot. I network with influencers all the time. And there are a lot of people who think that an economic downturn means that influencers are just going to go away and you don't want to invest in them. I honestly think influencers are one of the more effective and efficient ways that you could spend your, tighter marketing dollars right now than a lot of other channels, because instead of paying, big media fees and media placements and whatnot, you can partner with an influencer and work something out that it's kind of an over time kind of thing, because they're in a tight spot too, a lot of them, because you got to remember, influencers in addition to providing content to clients and brands on their channels, a lot of them do events, a lot of them speak at conferences to make their money. So they're drying up a little bit too. This might be a perfect time to reach out and say, hey, I've got a little bit of a marketing budget. Why don't we do some things together during this sort of tight time, so that A, I don't have to spend a lot of money, and B, you can make a little bit of money, but we can see how that works out together. So I think influencers are very effective uses of your marketing dollars right now, especially if you find the right ones who can really motivate their audience to do things. But I also think that there are going to be plenty of influencers who aren't creative enough to figure out how to make it through this, who are probably going to have to go find work elsewhere, or sort of be unemployed for a little while. I also think that there's, obviously a lot of businesses are scaling back their marketing budgets, and influencers are an easy thing to kind of cut because it's always been sort of a nice to have or an add-on if you're thinking about comparing it to like paying for your website and paying for, Facebook ads and things like that. So I definitely think there's going to be a long-term trickle-down effect, but I also think that the influencers that really move the needle for businesses are going to continue to move the needle whether we're, quarantined or not. There's certain industries that are obviously going to be hit harder and worse than others, but I do think that there are really viable channels with influencers, depending upon your geographic location, depending upon your industry and whatnot, where you can continue to be effective. The good thing for the green industry is people still got to have their yards done. They're spending more time at home. They're spending more time in the yards. If anybody wants to volunteer to come and weed my garden, I need it. I don't do that really well. So the work still needs to be done.
Yes, we battled the word essential very early on, and we were fortunate that our National Association of Landscape Professionals was able to get the CISA.gov Homeland Security document to say that landscaping was essential. They didn't get the memo for a long time in Michigan, but we're back in business there as well. So we are very grateful. We are the outdoor living room. And when you talk about a marketing budget, to me, the ROI on influencer would be so obvious when you're comparing it to other campaigns. We have big print ad campaigns, or we see our customers do that as well. And I'm not sure the ROI might be the one you hang on to an influencer.
Well, and think of it this way. I like to think, and part of one whole chapter in my book is devoted to how influencer marketing is a part of and very closely related to word of mouth marketing. Word of mouth marketing has statistically been proven, years over year over year, to be exponentially more effective than advertising or any other type of marketing. Now, when you look at it through the filter of online influencers, YouTubers and Instagrammers and Facebook people, things like that, you have to factor in sort of, okay, if there is a sponsored post and it is, follows FTC compliance rules and it says it's an ad or it's sponsored, well, that's going to, make it not as effective. Not true. There's actually research that I cite in the book that shows that when, especially the younger generations, the 20 and 30 somethings who have kind of grown up in the social media world, when they see that one of their favorite influencers is doing what they call a collab with an influencer, they like that company even more because that company is supporting their favorite content providers. So it actually works in the opposite way. That sponsored content is actually more effective and more meaningful. But you have to be really careful. It's not just about going to an influencer and saying, here's my logo, here's my picture, here's my message, advertise that to your follower, your fans. It's got to be, here's what I'd like to communicate to your audience. Let's work together so that you can genuinely communicate that in an effective way so that they believe you. You're borrowing their trust. And so that borrowed equity that they have built up with their audience over time means that the content really has to be genuine. It has to really come from the heart for the influencer, or it's not as effective. If you can find that though, and you can nail that down, the ROI is exponentially more than some channels, because I'm going to take a word of mouth recommendation from someone I know, like, and trust over anything else. And if I feel like I know, like, and trust this influencer, and they say, you've got to use this landscape service, and here's why, or you've got to buy these products for your backyard, and here's why, I'm going to believe that over, some random person telling me or seeing an advertisement.
What you just said has held true in the green industry for 30 years in terms of customer acquisition. Referrals retain longer. It's the best ROI, and not just the newly acquired customer. If you, Jason, say, go use this company, you're going to keep them longer as well because you've now endorsed them.
Absolutely. I mean, it really is all about sharing trust. If I recommend someone who does any work on my house, landscape or otherwise, I'm invested in them, right? Especially if a bunch of my friends start using them too. I'm not going to switch, because then I have to explain to my friends why I switched, and that's going to look bad on the person who provided that work for me. If they haven't done anything wrong, then I don't want to switch. I'm going to be more anchored to them because they're not a vendor to me at that point. They're a partner, and they're
Right.
someone who provides me with a service, and I appreciate that. And they're so good that I'm going to turn around and tell other people about them.
That's fantastic. I was featured in Jay Baer's book in 2013, Utility.
Yep.
And we talked about the work we were doing at Scott's Miracle Grow in that regard. And although the rationale behind it that you just so eloquently described is very similar, the channels of communication and the new platforms have changed dramatically. So if I am a smaller company and I'm doing it myself, is there a social media aggregator that you recommend, or are there any particular channels in which you would recommend a smaller company establish?
Well, I think what you have to start with is, how much time do I have to invest in this, and how quickly do I need to see a return? If you've got more time to invest and you've got a longer lead time before you really need to see, a return coming back from it, then you could, invest in the channels and develop a content pattern. So Facebook is kind of a no-brainer. You almost kind of have to be there these days because it's got 2 billion, users, and everybody seems to spend a few hours on Facebook every day, or at least have it open on their browser or looking at their phone when they're on their breaks and whatnot. So Facebook's kind of a no-brainer. Instagram is pretty hot right now, but Instagram has limitations. You can post your images, you can post your videos, but Instagram's not a real link-friendly place. Like, you only get one link in your bio, and you want that to go back to your website. So if you're working with an influencer, they don't want to give you that link. So you're not going to get a lot of website traffic and click-throughs there. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use it, because if you've got a very visual product like great landscaping, you want to represent your art and what you do in that platform because it's very shareable. But it might be more effective for you to partner with or create YouTube content, partner with YouTube influencers. It might be more effective for you to be on Twitter if your local community is really active on Twitter. Louisville's one of those places where Twitter was really big in the mid 2000s, and then it kind of became a little crowded and cluttered. But I've noticed more and more local Twitter conversations in the last couple of years. People are still using it to find their news headlines, follow celebrities and influencers and things like that. And sometimes, say, hey, Where should I go for, landscaping services in town? I'm looking for someone to come help me with some yard work. And you'll see some real-time conversations there. So depending upon your geographic footprint and your market, Twitter might make sense too. For if you're selling to other businesses, B2B, if you're doing landscaping for big, office parks and things like that, LinkedIn's probably going to be way more effective for you, because that's where business people go to be social and figure out, the solutions to their problems. So I think it's really about assessing how much time you have to create content, how much lead time you have to be able to, until you need to really see a return. And if that lead time is really short, I wouldn't worry so much about social media. I would start doing more advertisement, search, paid search, things like that.
So I think in our industry, YouTube is a tremendous source to showcase value-rich before and after properties. Is there additional upside in YouTube in terms of how Google perceives those links?
Absolutely. If you have a page on your site that talks about, the best, shade trees, let's just say, I'm making it up, and you have a video embedded on that page that shows, some sort of instructional thing about shade trees, and it is a YouTube video. YouTube is owned by Google. So there's going to be at least a little, hey, they're using our property, we like them, right? You're going to get a little vote. But here's the other thing that people don't often think about. That Google is the biggest, largest search engine on the planet. The second largest search engine on the planet is YouTube, right? So there's search going on YouTube for the types of things that you're doing, the types of content that you're promoting. I think not only does having that YouTube embed on your website benefit you, but you now are optimizing yourself for the biggest search engine in the world and the second biggest search engine in the world. And so that's kind of a double whammy. So YouTube is definitely more advantageous than a lot of other video players.
Interesting. Speaking of search engine capabilities, let's talk about Amazon. Is there a way to leverage the power of Amazon for your service or product that you can, what's the word I want to use? I've got, so how can you influence that or create a more positive return on search for Amazon?
Sure. If you're listing your products or service on Amazon, that's an entirely separate search engine, and there are different ways to optimize your product listings and pages around search there. And there's people that specialize in it. I don't know enough about Amazon myself to be able to list off a bunch of things, but here's what I do know about Amazon search engines. The more that you sponsor and pay, even if it's for a short amount of time, to promote your content on Amazon, the better you're going to be, and the better you're going to be long tail, because they're going to look at you as a paying customer as opposed to just someone who's throwing their stuff up in our marketplace. The second thing is you've got to drive customer reviews. Now, there are places like Amazon and Yelp and things like that will tell you explicitly you can't pay someone to come here and review your stuff. That's against our terms of service, and if we figure out you're doing it, we're going to penalize you. So you can't pay or really technically incent people to go review you on Amazon, but you can just ask your customers, hey, we're trying to build up our Amazon reviews. Would you mind going and giving us an honest review on Amazon? You can send a follow-up email after you've sent them a product or after the product's been delivered, and you can say, hey, we've got reviews on Google, Amazon, and some other place. Would you mind going to one of these of your choice and leaving us an honest review? We would love your feedback. Nothing wrong with asking for honest feedback from people, but the more reviews you drive on Amazon, the better you're going to rank in search compared to those who don't have as many reviews. And of course, it's better if you have 5- and 4-star reviews as opposed to 1s and 2s.
Let's talk about LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live. So I have never wanted to do this. I love going to events. I love events. I love public speaking. But for whatever reason, and I have absolutely no inhibitions to taking a stage in front of 1,000 people, but I don't like this, but I've had to get good at this.
You're getting good.
My travel calendar went like this. But and so Facebook Live, at one point I follow Rachel Hollis every day, and I swear she used to do a side-by-side interview. Is that a possibility on Facebook Live so that you and I could do this there as well as LinkedIn Live? And then tell me about the platform is it Stitcher Studio that you use as well? I'd like to talk about all three.
Sure. So Switcher Studio is what I use to do my podcast. I basically do a video live stream version of my podcast. Up until tomorrow, it's been on LinkedIn only. As of tomorrow, I'm using another third-party application, which I'll get into in a minute. I'm going to stream live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn all at the same time. I'll tell you about that in just a second. So yes, you cannot do the side-by-side, cool looking videos on Facebook Live just on your phone by yourself with just your Facebook account. You've got to use a third-party application like Switcher Studio. So Switcher Studio is the tool that I use. It's a Louisville, Kentucky-based startup. I've known these guys since they were working at a video production house, and they said, there's got to be a way to make event video production easier and cheaper for people. Instead of having to bring in a big film crew and multiple cameras and all sorts of production costs, what they invented originally with Switcher Studio was the ability to put basically a television production truck on an iPad or an iPhone, so that you've got multiple camera angles, any other iOS device on the same Wi-Fi network that has the Switcher Studio app. You can access the camera on that phone if the person's got it turned on and is logged into the app. So with 2 iPhones and an iPad, I could come into any event, sit in the back of the room with the iPad, kind of wide shot on the stage, and then have someone focused really close up on one of the speakers and someone really focused close up on maybe the slides. And I can sit in the back of the room and go camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 1, camera 3, camera 1, camera 2, camera 1. And all of a sudden, with my finger, I'm directing a television production. Now, that was the original intent, and it does that very, very well. I had them come and do a couple of events that I did in Louisville for a few years. A few years ago, when streaming started blowing up, Switcher Studio said, hey, we're going to make a video chat element of our production suite so that you can have all the same things from your event production, and you can pump in a video chat virtual conversation like we're having now. So what I can do on my podcast when I'm recording it, I pump it through Switcher Studio, and I've got a professional television production truck in my hand where I can have fancy fonts come up at the bottom and say who I am, and I can switch to the person I'm talking to. I can split screen us. I can have 3 people screened in for an interview at once. I can play recorded videos that I've loaded into Switcher Studio during the show with audio and everything. So when you watch my podcast recordings, when I record them as a live stream, tomorrow morning I'll be on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time. If you watch that's on Tuesdays, by the way. I don't know if this is going to go live or recorded or anything. So Tuesdays at 8 a.m. you can see this. You'll see that I start my show out with a music intro and a little, graphic that has my face that says, hey, welcome to the Jason Paul Show. And then I come into my live thing, and then I have graphics come up under my face, and then I have the split screen interview, and then I have a music outro at the end of the show. All looks like a big fancy television production, and I'm doing it all from my iPad.
That's crazy. So many of our clients have said to me, when I've said, why aren't you creating content? I don't have a video camera. I don't have this. I don't know what I'm doing.
Everybody's got it. It's right here. That little dot right there, that's your camera. Get it something to mount it on, and boom, and live stream, and there you are. And literally, I have actually done live streams for my show like this, just bop, 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 and I'm just talking to my camera. It doesn't have to be crazy, fancy, professional. It's better if it is, sure. But if you can kind of, keep your elbow tucked into your ribs, that way your arm doesn't shake, and you can hold the camera right there and do that. The multiple streaming thing is an additional third party. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to pump everything into Switcher Studio, and then I'm going to pump that through a service called Restream, which is restream.io, Restreamio, if you want to call it that. And basically, you sign up for a Restream account. It costs a few bucks a month to do it. But they've got different levels, so you don't have to invest hundreds of dollars if you don't need to or don't want to. And basically, they take your single stream from Switcher Studio and they connect it and push it to LinkedIn, and they push it to Twitch, and they push it to YouTube, and wherever you tell it to push it, they'll push it. They've got 30 different networks. And so tomorrow, I'm going to multi-stream for the first time on my podcast recording, which is going to be fun.
That is crazy. And I assume all of those channels then boost your SEO.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you're getting your content in front of more people, and live video is something that all these networks are prioritizing now because it's more engaging, enriching content. So they're going to promote it. They're going to make sure that people in your stream see it. That's why every time you're logged into one of these networks, you'll see little notifications. Jason Falls is live. Beth Berry is live. Whatever. Well, that's because they want people to see those live videos. It's more engaging, keeps people on their platform longer. Anytime you're doing that, you're getting more followers, you're getting more traffic to your social networks, and all those things kind of go into those big search algorithms. Google has said before, we don't really count, links from social networks. And that may be true, but they do count traffic, and traffic comes from social networks too.
Ooh, very good point. And you're right. Everybody has one of these. And for the media that our companies are capturing, it is out in the field.
Yeah.
I want to show you what an emerald ash borer looks like. This is what grubworm damage looks like. This is the before and after here. You're expecting it to be a little rough.
Let me just kind of share with you one thing that we've been doing at Cornet with Visit Lex, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau for Lexington, Kentucky. We've been doing some local programming on their Facebook page where we've got local businesses during this COVID thing that we're trying to highlight and make sure that people know that they're doing delivery and curbside and stuff like that. But we've also been doing it with tourist attractions, and we have had the horse country horse farms in central Kentucky, where all the thoroughbreds are bred and whatnot. They have been doing virtual tours on their own pages, and we've just been like doing watch parties for them. There's a couple of farms that do them a couple days a week, and they literally, it's like these old cowboy country guys with horse people will come out in the field with their phone and be like, all right, we're going to look at the foal barn today. And then they turn the camera around and just show you the foal barn. And it's just a person holding their phone. It's nothing any more fancy than that. They just say, hey, we're live. Welcome to the show. We're going to see the horses today. And it's as unpolished and informal as you would think it is. And it's fantastic. People love it.
It's real. It feels real, and it puts you right there in that place.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I will be signing up for Stitcher Studios immediately. And the other one was restream.io, and that's how to get it across multiple platforms live at the same time.
Correct. And actually, just to make sure, it's Switcher Studio, SWITCH, not Stitcher. Stitcher is a podcast app, which is good to have too. But Switcher Studio, and if you go to switcherstudio.com/falls, my last name, you can get 10% off your if you sign up, you get 10% off your thing for as long as you have it.
And I will put that on our impact links when we post this, because that is good to know. And we've had folks say to me, Beth, you should be doing this on Instagram, and you should be doing it on LinkedIn Live. As you know, I'm barely getting it out the door every day on Facebook, but this looks so much easier. And I like the multi-platform. So Stitcher Studios and Restreamio, I will be utilizing.
So, and let me, for all the people out there who are considering doing this and are a little intimidated by the technology and whatnot, because of this Restreamio thing that I'm going to start tomorrow, literally on Friday night, I just went live on all those platforms and just said, hey, sorry to interrupt your Friday night, but I'm just kind of testing this thing to see if it works. And you know what? Everybody loved me just testing it, because I was saying, I'm thinking I'm going to be able to do this. Oh, my LinkedIn's not working. I'm going to have to go fix that here in a minute. But I'm just doing a live, talking to people, just, what are you doing on Friday night? Here's what I'm doing. And then I switched over to my phone and I said, see, here's my setup, and I'm doing this over here. So even me goofing off was useful to my audience. That might not necessarily be as useful to yours, but they're going to understand it and get excited because you're doing something cool.
Right. I love that. I often say, is it the wand or the wizard? And it is the wizard. It's the thoughts, insights, and experience of people like you. But boy, if you've got the wrong wand, it makes it a little more clunky.
Yeah, it's hard to do live streaming video on LinkedIn if A, you don't have a camera phone, or B, you don't know what software to use. So you got to have some thinking behind it. I use the analogy actually in the book when I'm talking about, we've got to make sure that we're not letting automation and technology and machines take over. There has to be some human thought and strategy that goes into these things to humanize our marketing. But I use the analogy of, you can put a dachshund in a Mercedes Benz, but he ain't going to know how to drive it anywhere, right? You've got to have someone behind the wheel that knows what they're doing.
Excellent. In your book about influencers, do you give guidance in terms of what content should be created for those influencers, or how to identify what your audience would really like to see?
Absolutely. In fact, building a content arsenal is part of my steps. I want to say that might be chapter 7 in the book, but there's a whole chapter devoted to look, before you even reach out to the influencers, you don't want to reach out, get them to agree, and then have them say, okay, well, what do you have for me? You've got to be ready with that content to say, okay, we've got background information, we've got videos, we've got slide decks, we've got all this stuff that you can use. Let them create their version of the content, but you've got to give them those resources. Think of it like you would used to think of public relations or media relations. When you reach out to magazines and newspapers, they're going to want pictures, they're going to want quotes, they're going to want interviews. Treat your influencers the same way. Give them all the resources you can. Let them figure out which ones work for them and let them use what they want.
I love that. We should have had this conversation 2 months ago instead of me going, who are the most influential people in digital marketing? Hey, Jason, will you join me? Yeah, what do you want me to talk about? Well, I don't know, but you're really smart, so we'll figure it out as we go. I Can I get that chapter in advance? Because that would be very beneficial for me.
I have to clear it by my publisher, but I could probably summarize it for you pretty easily.
I know our industry, I know our 3,000 customers, and I've got a great Rolodex, but I need your book now, not in January. I'm going to frame this up ASAP. I don't have time.
Well, I'll do my best. My publisher's not going to let me release all of it because they want something to sell when it comes out, but I'll do my very best. You can always follow me, on social networks and stuff. I give this kind of advice for free whenever I can and I have time, so I'm happy to help whenever I can.
I've got his name was Christopher. Who did you Trap?
Yeah, Christoph Trapp. Yeah.
Christoph Trap. Yeah, I've got that one lined up at 4 o'clock today. I'm going to watch that. That looks really interesting.
Cool. Yeah, he's a great guy. He's a little bit closer to you. He's in Iowa. That's at least Big Ten country.
Sure,
But
sure.
yeah, he's a great guy.
Well, before we wrap this up, are there any things coming down the pike, any new channels, any new strategies that you would recommend, particularly in light of the fact that the world has changed in the last 8 weeks? And everyone I know is going back through and looking at marketing budgets for the remainder of 2020. What will 2021 look like? Is there anything in particular that we should pay attention to?
Well, I think right now we're all going to be focused on how do am I more efficient with my marketing dollar, and that's where really smart digital can come into play. Whether it's just a partnership with an influencer, or it's sitting down and taking an extra hour a week to knock out a video or a written blog post or something like that for your business. Digital content is A, you can publish it for free. And B, it doesn't take a whole lot of money to actually support it with a paid campaign, either paid search or promoted posts on social to get people to see it. So I think your digital dollar is going to be much more of an efficient spend than other areas probably. So we're going to be concentrating on that. In terms of opportunities for social networks and whatnot, I struggle personally with TikTok. I'm not quite I'm not quite an it getter there yet, but the volume of people running to TikTok these days is alarming, and we as marketers need to be aware of that. And I'm starting to see businesses and brands, kind of those early adopter folks, who are doing little 15-second, almost little commercials or little, hey, did you know this, or that kind of thing. And it's obviously a very video and very visual driven platform. So for people in the green industry, you're able to show off your work. If you're able to do it in a quick 15-second video, you might be putting content out there that people on TikTok absolutely love. So I would encourage everybody to download it, get an account, play with it, explore it. If you've got kids, especially teenagers or college age kids, they're probably already using it. They can probably help you. My 11-year-old daughter taught me how to use it. And I've written a book about social media. So I turned to my daughter and said, Katie, show me TikTok. What do people do here? At the time, everybody was just doing lip sync videos, which I thought were stupid. So, but at the same time, I'm starting to see more and more businesses use it. So it's probably going to be a viable platform for us to explore.
I tried to set up TikTok last week And I want to say it wouldn't allow me to do it on my Mac. I had to do it on a mobile device. Is that true?
Yeah, it's a mobile app. You can see TikTok content on a desktop computer, but you're going to basically produce content on your phone because it's really take a quick 15-second video and then you can actually add music to it, or you can add, fonts and bells and whistles and stickers and stuff like that if you want. And so it's definitely an app-driven thing.
Very cool. Switcher Studios, here I come. I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your very busy schedule today. And we will have links to sign up to your newsletter because I have certainly enjoyed your wit and wisdom over the years. And you're always on the cutting edge, even if you have to tap into your 11-year-old daughter for TikTok. I know I can look to you for what's new and
Yeah.
exciting. So thank you very much.
That's her right there. That's Katie in that picture
Aw,
hanging on the wall. She's
what
dressed
a
as a snail. That's from a circus performance a couple years ago.
That is so cool. Do you think that you'll be traveling this year? Do you think events will happen? And if so, when?
Well, I've already started to get some notifications that the events, in August, September, October, which is kind of busy speaking season, are starting to say, "Hey, we're going to do something virtual, or we're not actually going to do anything." So I think we're going to get into the fall and even the winter before events start coming back, and it might even be, calendar year 21 before we really start getting back out there for events. But I think with everything else right now, I think it's a big wait and see, because as certain states start to sort of open up their policies of opening back up and getting people back out again, I have a concern that we're going to see another wave of outbreak of the virus. And so I think we're going to have to play this by ear for a while. If you're planning an event for this calendar year, I would immediately start thinking, how do we do this virtually and make it really meaningful? Because that's probably going to be a safer bet.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. I'll be following you and I cannot wait to get your book.
All right, Beth, thank you for having me.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Okay, cool.